Right. Guys, welcome into my official college football week number 8 hot takes, where I go through 14 or 15 hot takes based off of week number 8's action. Number 1, Ohio State's 54-10 win over Iowa was fake. Now, guys, I've seen a crazy amount of cope coming from the Ohio State fan base about their huge win over Iowa. But guys, I'm a context guy. I watch the games. I see what I can take from the games that's going to help me predict future performance. And what I saw from Ohio State was a horrible running game. CJ Stroud still cannot operate while being pressured inside the pocket. And guys, I think Ohio State gave off a lot of warning signs. They won 54-10 because Iowa gave them, I would say, 27 free points? The pick six. Iowa was literally throwing the ball right to the Ohio State defenders. So guys, I respect Ohio State, but this 54-10 win was totally fake. It completely lacks context, and it is not going to be a good gauge on how to judge this Ohio State team moving forward. Ohio State didn't even have 400 yards of total offense in this game, and they barely got to 300. They had to, get a few late touchdowns to even get there. So Iowa's defense really good against Ohio State's offense. I saw a few major warning signs. I just want to let people know there were a few major warning signs. Ohio State's inability to, convert third and short, running the football. Their offensive line getting no push on those downs. 30 carries for 66 yards. It's not good signs moving forward for Ohio State. They scored 54 points because they were given the ball in Iowa territory on about 8 drives. That's just the reality of the situation. Sometimes you got to be real about it. Number 2, Penn State can beat Ohio State next week. So guys, I'm not predicting it. I'll save that for tomorrow when I make my official college football week 9 predictions. But the game next week, Penn State's going to be at home. They got crushed by Michigan. We all know that. But then they come home. Sean Clifford looks good. They annihilate Minnesota. I don't want to overreact to it because Minnesota couldn't throw the ball with their backup quarterback. But guys, the way both of these teams are trending, Penn State being at home, I think it's going to be a very close game. I don't know what the spread will open at. But if it's like Penn State plus 13 or 14, you need to get on Penn State because in my opinion, they will cover that. It's just a situation where it seems like these two teams are trending in opposite directions. Ohio State, to me, their offense they took such a step back this past week against Iowa. It looked like the same thing as last year. You can't run the ball. CJ Stroud struggles when he gets pressure. Penn State, on the other hand, veteran quarterback. We know what Sean Clifford is. If you keep him in the game, he might be able to make a big play for you. Also, Penn State will have the home crowd advantage in this matchup. So I think this is possibly going to be the game of the year, this Penn State-Ohio State game next week. And I'm leaning more towards that Michigan game for Penn State being an aberration than really that's who they are. Because I'll be honest, Penn State got annihilated by Michigan. That was a shocking result. But I'm saying, you know what? Maybe it's an aberration. Number 3, Tennessee should be number 1 right now. Guys, I'm a big believer in capturing the essence of a season. And right now, in my opinion, Ohio State, I don't think they deserve it. They don't have a good enough win. Georgia certainly doesn't deserve it. Guys, I think Tennessee, I don't think they're the best team in the country right now. But when you combine resume with record, you combine both those things, I think Tennessee should be number 1. And I think when we look back on this season and people see Tennessee, they were ranked number 1, let's capture the actual essence of what's going on. Give Tennessee their respect, rank them number 1 for a few weeks. They're probably going to lose to Georgia anyways on the road. That's a tough game. But I just think, listen, this whole idea where we got to put Georgia number 1. Why? Georgia struggled against Kent State. They almost lost to Missouri. So let's give Tennessee some respect. I would go Tennessee number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia maybe even Michigan number 3, honestly. But it's close, Georgia and Michigan. Of course, guys, that brings me to my number 4 point. the Georgia-Oregon situation. It's just really sad. And guys, I've kind of, had a little fun with this situation, but I do want to talk about it on a serious note. This happens every now and again in college football. Normally, it's not this extreme where two teams will be ranked. One team will crush the other team in week one, and then the team that got crushed goes on a massive winning streak, which elevates the team that crushed them significantly. The reason Georgia is number one right now is because Oregon keeps winning. Like, it's not even because of what Georgia's doing. Georgia is struggling with Missouri. They're struggling with Penn State. Their offense is sputtering. But because Oregon keeps winning and retroactively they have that crazy 49-3 win over them in week one, that's why Georgia gets to be number one. It's a sad situation. Guys, before the season I said Oregon was one of my top three surprise teams. But it's just like this thing where no matter what Oregon does, it's not going to matter. Georgia is always going to be better than them because they beat them 49-3, but now Oregon is running through the Pac-12. So then people say, well, how good does that make Georgia? Well, but what about Oregon? So if you mean to tell me that Oregon is this really good team, how does Penn State score 22 points against Georgia on the road, yet Oregon can only get 3? How about Missouri beating Georgia by 10 points in the fourth quarter? Oregon gets annihilated. So you mean to tell me Oregon's this great team, and then because Oregon is so great, Georgia's in the next stratosphere? Because if Oregon is great, Georgia must be a superpower because Georgia beat them 49-3. Guys, the dynamics of this situation are so sad. So sad. But that's just kind of how college football is. It happened back in 2017 with Ohio State and Oklahoma. It wasn't this extreme because Oklahoma already had 2 losses, but Ohio State beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma won out. It made Ohio State's win look really good. When they beat, think about it. When Georgia beat Oregon in week one, people were saying, Oregon sucks. They're going to be 6-6. They're not going to be ranked inside the top 25. Now obviously people think they're so good and that win's great. It's just one of those college situations that you got to deal with sometimes. Number 5, the Pac-12 is eating itself. Yes, it's so unfortunate. The Pac-12 kind of looking there for a second, possibly on path to have a playoff team. Maybe if Oregon finishes with 1 loss, but there's no margin for error. USC already has a loss. UCLA now has a loss. Utah now has 2 losses. So the Pac-12, we thought maybe there was a chance they get a playoff team. They still definitely can, but the chances are a little bit lower now that all these teams are losing. Number 6, A&M will get a total overhaul, but I do think they keep Jimbo Fisher. Guys, the reason A&M is signing all these 5 stars, the NIL booster cheating, all of it is facilitated through Jimbo Fisher and what he wants and things like that. So I don't think they would fire Jimbo Fisher. They just signed 8 5-stars, but I do think the boosters will be very loud about an offensive overhaul and a young offensive coordinator that I think A&M is going to hire. They're a broken program right now, but I warned people before the season when A&M was preseason number 7. I said, listen, these are all true freshmen. I don't know why they're a top 10 team. They have the talent, but they're all true freshmen. True freshmen do not make an impact. 99% of the time, they do not make an impact in college football. It's the same thing that's happening here. These true freshmen, the 5-star receivers, the 5-star defensive linemen, they're playing a little bit, but they're not making a ton of an impact. A&M will be good. They will keep Jimbo Fisher, and their boosters will demand that Jimbo completely goes hands off on the offense, in my opinion, and or at least they hire an offensive coordinator that kind of takes over and Jimbo has minimal input. That's what I think is going to happen there. Miami football is lost. Guys, I think Miami turned the ball over in the second half on 6 straight possessions. Tyler Van Dyke leaves this game with an injury against Duke. They were 9-point home favorites against Duke. It was a weird 12:30 ESPN 3 start. And Miami, the stadium, the atmosphere, everything, the start to the Mario Cristobal era, horrific. Everything about it is so bad. Miami, are they going to miss a bowl? Are they going to be 7-5, 6-6? They're shilling out NIL dollars. We understand that their recruiting is getting better, but will it even matter? Because it's not like they're doing what A&M's doing. A&M is actually buying everyone. Miami is getting a better class, but it's not going to be good enough to even have better classes than Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, obviously A&M. So I really don't know. I think Miami's in a really bad spot right now. Obviously, you're not giving up on Mario Cristobal. I will say, I've looked at Mario Cristobal differently ever since somebody told me how bad he was with Justin Herbert. And when you think about it, it is crazy because Justin Herbert, going into his junior season at Oregon, he came back for his senior year, I think. Going into his senior year, was seen as a top 10 pick. He completely regressed as a senior, and now he's a superstar in the NFL. So it's like, what is Mario Cristobal doing with their offenses? Number 8, Ole Miss is who we thought they were. So guys, Ole Miss, number 7 ranked team, on the road against an unranked team. They were underdogs. They were 1.5-point favorites. The line flipped to even. The line ballooned all the way to LSU minus the 3, and then it finished at LSU minus 1.5. The number 7 team in the nation. The number 7 team was underdogs to an unranked team, and for good reason. Ole Miss was completely overrated. I understand they were undefeated, so they got to move them up in the AP poll. But we knew this. I said they were a fraud when they ran up the score on Vanderbilt. And it finally happens. LSU is going to be inside the top 20. Jane Daniels is totally turning it around. We have to give LSU football and Brian Kelly credit for the turnaround they've had. I think they're 4-1 in SEC play, so they'll certainly be a top 20 team. And Ole Miss, I'm sure, is still going to be ranked, but I would put them as like a fringe top 20 team at this point. Moving to number 9, Alabama defense or Mississippi State's offense. So I think it's a combination of both. I have always said I think Alabama has the most talented defense in college football with Will Anderson, with the secondary Jordan Battle, with Dallas Turner. But it's just a situation where Mississippi State and their air raid offense, it's not a way to win football games. It really isn't, and especially Mississippi State doesn't recruit at the talent level that's needed on the offensive side of the ball to be an elite team if you're going to use an air raid offense where you're completely one-dimensional. And you've got a defense like Alabama who is teeing off because you are one-dimensional. So I think Alabama's defense, really good game. We're all well, actually, you know what? This is college football. You kind of expect Alabama's defense to finally show up. They do. They basically pitch a shutout. I had the over. Obviously, it was a terrible call. I should have thought that Alabama's defense would have improved at home against the Mississippi State team that was overrated. Guys, look up Will Rogers' numbers. Oh my God. I think Will Rogers had 50 pass attempts. He didn't throw a single touchdown. Just maybe 60. It was crazy. Number 10, rest in peace to James Madison. Oh man, so James Madison gets ranked last week. There's so much hype around him. The new FBS program. Then they lose to Georgia Southern in a shootout. And then this week at home, 12.5-point favorites. Oh no, Marshall beats them 26-12. They were up 12-2 in this game early. Yes, Marshall scored a safety. But then Marshall, gets a bunch of points. James Madison now with 2 losses. So they really, faltered quickly there after being ranked, unfortunately. Number 11, Kansas may finish 5-7. So Kansas right now, another loss to Baylor. I believe they're 5-3. But guys, just due to how much of a gauntlet the Big 12 is, there's no real bad teams. I think they have a road game with Texas Tech. They've got a home game with Texas. I could see Kansas honestly losing out. They might get to 6-6, but it's just a tough conference. Kansas, of course, starts 5-0. They've lost 3 in a row. They might actually lose 7 in a row. Number 12, Tulane to a New Year's Six Bowl. Yes, how great would that be? I always love when there's new blood in the New Year's Six Bowl. Now, maybe Cincinnati goes back, and I certainly respect Cincinnati's program, but it would be a little bit boring. I'm rooting for Tulane. Originally, I was rooting for Toledo. Then they just lost. Now I'm rooting for Tulane to be the Group of 5 representative that makes a New Year's Six Bowl. I think it'd be great, for college football and get new blood, an interesting team into the New Year's Six mix. TCU has 20 lives. Guys, every week TCU seems to be losing at the half, losing in the first half. Kansas State up 28-17 at halftime against TCU, and TCU reels off, I believe, 21 unanswered points to win that game. TCU, still undefeated. They're still undefeated. They've got tough matchups upcoming in the Big 12, but they keep playing these games where they're trailing and they end up winning. You've got to respect it at this point. They are still undefeated. Illinois is in full control of the Big Ten West. Guys, nobody wants to win the Big Ten West outside of Illinois. Purdue, we thought maybe it was their time to make a charge. They lose to Wisconsin. They got crushed. Aiden O'Connell, the 3 interceptions. They're really missing skill position players in that Purdue offense. But Illinois right now, it looks like they have a clear path to, make it to Indianapolis, which would be crazy. My goodness, I thought Illinois was the second worst team in the Big Ten behind only, or in front of only Indiana. That certainly is wrong. They're using defense. They're using Chase Brown. They're coming off a bye week. And kind of an interesting schedule twist. Michigan has Illinois and then Ohio State. So the last 2 games of their regular season, Illinois at home and then at Ohio State. I'm sure Michigan fans before the season loved that they faced Illinois before Ohio State, because we all thought Illinois, they were going to be one of the worst teams in Power 5. But now it's like that's not a bye week game for Michigan. Yes, we think they're going to beat Illinois at home, but Illinois plays tough football. Number 15, Baylor football is back. Baylor easily handles Kansas. They completely dominated that game. They end up winning by 12 and covering the spread. And guys, if you take a look at Baylor's next 4 or 5 games in the Big 12, I could very easily see them winning all these games. The schedule sets up very good for them. We know how good the conference is, or how much parity there is in the Big 12. But Baylor is definitely a team that could go on a run because the schedule sets up really nicely. Number 16, Clemson has a 0% chance of winning the Natty, and it's quarterback concerns. It's quarterback problems. So Clemson ends up benching DJ Uiagalelei for just crazy ineffectiveness. At this point, DJ's in his second year starting. I think he pretty much is what he is in this offense, just an average college quarterback. They bring in the true freshman. He helps them get the win. But guys, Clemson has far too many quarterbacks concerns, in my opinion, to beat a team like Georgia, to beat a team like Ohio State, to beat a team like Alabama. So, I would say at this point, Clemson, they're probably going to walk through the rest of the ACC. They very well could enter the playoffs undefeated. But it's just the quarterback. It's just not a good enough offense, in my opinion. The defense is fine. It's good. We knew it was going to be very talented. But in my opinion, the offense is not good enough. So, guys, those are my college football week number 8 hot takes. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.